President Trump is saying that he is terminating trade negotiations with Canada over a TV ad campaign. Premier of Ontario, Canada, Doug Ford, says the controversial tariff ad will be paused after this weekend's World Series. Joining us to discuss is Fergus Hodgson, the director of Econ Americas and author of the book Financial Sovereignty for Canadians. So to start off, can we get your comments on what do you make of the president's reaction here to the ad?
Well, it's actually probably a smart move on his part because it gives him more leverage when the meetings happen in mid 2026. So basically, the Canadians are trying to soften Trump's stance, leading into those meetings, but Trump is basically saying, "I will not let you get any advantage before these meetings begin."
Well, I mean, I guess it looks like it's a smart move because Ford said, the Premier of Ontario, that trade talks can resume because they'll start pausing the ad on Monday. So I guess, was that a really heavy card that Trump played here, do you think, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, the truth is, in my opinion, the Ontario Premier was making a foolish decision because he is a hypocrite on this issue, that Canada has all sorts of protection of its own. So whenever they lash out or promote free trade, they're basically self-reporting themselves as impediments to free trade. And Canada has both impediments between the provinces and with the United States, famously the supply management system. Further, Canada has been the chief promoter of all sorts of social causes, environmental causes, worker rights within a quote-unquote trade agreement. These elements should not be there, and Canada has been leading the way on that. I've written on this and said that if Canada wants free trade, she should practice it.
So, Fergus, at the core of this issue, it appears to be that ad involving Ronald Reagan and what he said about tariffs, right? So can I get your view on that as well? What is President Ronald Reagan's stance on tariffs? What is the context?
No, so people should take a look at that. It's actually very professionally done. The dispute is not over the words he said, but with the use and the editing, or let's say the selective editing of his words, because Ronald Reagan was explaining his use of tariffs against other nations, but in a very limited fashion. So Trump has said this himself, although we don't want to report all his words because they're not always consistent. But the position that Ronald Reagan was saying is that the ideal is free trade. Economists agree with this. Most policy researchers agree with this. The challenge is just how to engage in conflict or dispute with another nation without going to war. And often tariffs or trade impediments are tools that politicians have available to them that would be less destructive than others. So in this case, Donald Trump has said repeatedly that he wants Canada to be better in alignment with the United States and not with China. He wants them to have better resolution of narco trafficking, of illegal immigration. So there are issues of dispute. Further, Canada, as I've mentioned, has its own trade barriers that are hypocritical, and these are meaningful. It covers dairy, poultry, eggs. In my opinion, this pressure from Trump, the sort of upping the stakes or challenging the Canadian government, is actually healthy for Canada because it'll promote some introspection.
Okay, so on that point, you're saying it's healthy for Canada. Does this have any negative bearing at all whatsoever on U.S.-Canada relations?
Well, okay, so I want Canada to stop picking a fight with the United States and to accept or work with the United States as the chief ally. More than 3/4 of Canada's exports go to the United States. Canada is a heavily export-dependent nation. Canada has a heck of a lot to lose if these negotiations go sour. So all this grandstanding for ideological purposes and picking up the sort of anti-American sentiment that many Canadians hold is counterproductive. It's unhealthy. And so, yes, Canada needs to, in my view, to align with the United States and stop escalating. This sort of ad, although, like I said, professionally done, and it does use those words convincingly for free trade, this was an escalation that was unnecessary, a waste of money, and obviously Trump was not going to stand for it. So I don't know where the Premier of Ontario thought this was going to lead.
Okay, what do you think about this? Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand recently said that Canada views Beijing as a strategic partner. Do you think President Trump's decision could potentially drive Canada closer to countries like China?
There would be a huge price to pay for Canada to align more closely with China. They can do it, but they would be shooting themselves in the foot. Trump is building a transatlantic trade bloc, a U.S.-centric or U.S.-oriented trade bloc. So he wants to have all the Americas, all the European economies together. And this is his geopolitical strategy. He wants to have them align with the United States. And anyone who does not will pay a heavy price, right? The nucleus in the Americas of this pro-China alignment is Cuba and Venezuela. And obviously we can see right now that the temperature is rising heavily right now. So Canada could do that, but it would be an incredibly bad decision. In my mind, it would be a suicide mission. And it would be, so I just think they could, but I think that would lead to the Liberal Party of Canada being thrown out of office in short order.
Okay, Fergus, can you talk to us about this as well? Talk to us about Canada's internal politics, energy production, and trade beyond the United States.
Yes, so the big challenge in Canada right now, and this is why I mentioned that Canada has both external free trade problems and internal free trade problems. In the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there's a portion dedicated to free trade between the provinces, but this has never really been enforced. And there are all sorts of impediments, from occupational licensure and the most notably to just bringing alcohol between the provinces. But the real sticking point right now is on energy supplies, because Alberta is energy rich and wants to get its supplies to international markets. And in fact, this would give more leverage in the trade negotiations, because right now Canada has little choice but to export to the United States. There is a stalled pipeline project between Alberta and the British Columbia coastline that's been stuck for a long time. And it is like, there's so much to say about the Canadian challenges here, because really Canada is a fractured nation, and Alberta, the energy producer of the country, is finding itself isolated from international markets and wanting to find independence, right? So to get more autonomy from Ottawa. And in particular, because the British Columbian Premier or British Columbian provincial government is impeding access to international markets, to tidewater or ocean water.
Okay, Fergus, just one last question here. Can you talk to us about what's on your radar, what's on the horizon for you before the USMCA review?
Yeah, so I've written about how Canada and Mexico can be better prepared for these negotiations. And again, as I said, this advertisement, albeit slick, was doing harm to that. And my contention is that Canada and Mexico can be in a stronger position. Both of them, they depend heavily on the United States. And what they can do is, one, don't pick a fight with the United States. They can focus on being in alignment. And in my view, it is healthy for both countries to do so. Second, they can diversify their own economy. They can look inward and see, as in Canada, why are we not utilizing our energy resources, not just in Alberta, but elsewhere, or our natural resources. And the same in Mexico. Under President AMLO, there was there was not a single approval for new mining concessions. And this puts you in a weaker position, that if you have nothing to trade, no sort of highly valuable items, the United States can do without you and can walk away from any agreement and hurt you a great deal, whereas Mexico cannot walk away from the United States. And the third is that in between now and then, Canada and Mexico should look to open trade or work in other areas. So there are other trade deals or bilateral options they can go to make them slightly less dependent on the United States in the meantime, in a healthy fashion. It doesn't hurt the United States that Canada and Mexico also trade with Australia or Japan or whatever it may be, other countries. And that would also mean there'd be that have a little bit, slightly more leverage when it comes to these negotiations or to the review in 2026.
Okay, well, Fergus, well said. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.